We've been pondering mystery, and I've been thinking back to when I was 3, 4 years old. And I would ask questions about, well, why is it so cold? And why is it so hot? And why does my dog have fur? And I kept going with that. But then I went to school, and they kind of drummed that out a little bit. And then my middle ages, I think I felt like I kind of knew what was going on. I didn't have time for the mystery. I kind of was set in my ways. And now that I'm getting a little bit older, I'm back to, as Peter Mayer would say, everything is holy now. Everything's a mystery. And I think I enjoy that space. While I was looking for a reading, I came across one by Gordon McKeeman. How does one address a mystery? Cautiously, reverently, hopefully, quietly. But what shall I say? Anything. Any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any request. Any word that comes from the depth of being addressed to being itself. Or perhaps nothing. No complaint, no request, no entreaty, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or not knowing. Simply be in the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. How does one address a mystery? Cautiously, reverently, hopefully, quietly, and at the end say, Amen. Our first reading is an excerpt from On the Mystery by Catherine Keller. When she was barely 5, my niece Jennifer took me for a walk in her neighborhood. "Come this way, Catherine," she said with a dramatic air of hushed excitement. Wielding a stick like a magnifying glass, poking and prodding beneath the shrubs along the sidewalk, she handed me a pebble, then a petal, to look and examine for myself, as though for clues. "What are we looking for, Jennifer?" "We're on a mystery," she exclaimed. I don't know where she had picked up this precocious imitation of Sherlock Holmes, perhaps from her father, a policeman. She grew into a geologist, so her fascination with the puzzling detail of the world stayed with her. That peculiar phrase, "stayed with me." With a child's spontaneity, it combined the adventure of a mystery with an intense purposefulness echoing, "We're on the job," or "We're on the way." And yet, there wasn't any crime she was trying to solve. Hers was mystery for its own sake. This way of mystery, the wonder of its process, is not justified by its endpoint. It wanders ahead in time and in space by no terribly linear path. Yet each step matters. The second reading is by Jan Richardson, Where the Map Begins. This is not any map you know. Forget longitude, forget latitude. Do not think of distances or of plotting the most direct route. Astrolabe, sextant, compass, these will not help you here. This is the map that begins with the star. This is the chart that starts with fire, with blazing, with an ancient light that has outlasted generations, empires, cultures, wars. Look starward once and then look away. Close your eyes and see how the map begins to blossom behind your lids, how it constellates, its lines stretching out from where you stand. You cannot see it all, cannot divine the way it will turn and spiral, cannot perceive how the road you walk will lead you finally inside, through the labyrinth of your own heart and belly and lungs. But step out, and you will know what the wise who have traveled this path before you knew. The treasure in this map is buried not at the journey's end, but at its beginning.
As a child, I had a best friend, Izzy. Izzy was our neighbor. She was widowed years before we moved in. She was retired, spending days at home, which meant to me, I assume that's where she always was. She never went anywhere else. She was either on the back porch letting her tiny little Shih Tzu named Mighty Dog out, or taking excess treats to our dogs just across the yard, which I seemed to be more okay with than my parents were. She was a great friend to me. She was always welcoming to me. I'd come to her door, peering inside, asking if she was there. She'd say, "Come on in, Luke," and either give me some cookies or some juice, and then continue whatever she was doing, letting me just roam around the house or sit and see what she was watching on TV. And it was a time in TV that was a little more safe to let neighbor children just sit down and watch what was on daytime television without getting scarred for life in one's psyche. So it was fine. I remember she regularly would watch Murder, She Wrote, which that tune has been in my head recently. You know that tune, right? Do 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 da 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 da. Keeps going. It's this whimsical, happy tune for a show about murder. It's interesting. It's a show that others in my family liked too. It's what my mother-in-law calls a good old whodunit. We joke sometimes about how clean-cut the show was. When someone dies, they're just calmly lying on the floor like they just kind of gently fell over and died, were murdered. No gruesome scene. Watching that show is one of my earliest experiences with mystery, something to figure out, to attend to clues and details and characters. And the best part of these mysteries were they were wrapped up within an hour, tied with a bow, easy to understand. You could go back into your real world, be convinced that everything was going to be okay, and if it wasn't, then Angela Lansbury, aka Jessica Fletcher, was going to figure it out for you in her whimsical, happy way. Well, what I remember most about these are not so much the details. I couldn't really tell you much of the storylines at all, but never knowing what was going to happen next was fascinating to me, which may be more of a commentary on my own detective skills and prediction than anything else, but I was surprised by whatever turn of events happened in the storyline in that episode, what happened during that day. It was so much better than the other show I watched a lot of, Unsolved Mysteries, which its very premise was terrifying to me as a child. I didn't like that show, but I watched it many, many times, because that's what I did in the 90s. I'd watch TV regardless if I liked what I was watching. But Catherine Keller speaks of her niece being on the mystery in the reading Jeff shared with us. No particular destination, nothing specific to figure out, no crime to solve, just an intense and invigorating, purposeful search for whatever might come. And I think that's what seemed most magical to me about the short journey across the yard from my house to Izzy's house. I always went with what Catherine Keller called the spontaneity of a child that combines adventure and intent purposefulness without any particular endpoint at all. I went in search of whatever that day was going to bring. I peered in the front door with such purposefulness, with nothing particular to find. No end game, no strategy, just the possibilities of the day, of baking some cookies, or helping with Mighty Dog, or coloring a picture, or watching some magical show around mystery that was somehow comforting, because I was curled up on a floor in a place that I loved, no expectation of what the day or should bring. Forget latitude and longitude, writes Jan Richardson. This is no map that you know. It begins with a star, leads to your own heart. The treasure is not buried at the end, but at the beginning. To be on the mystery is not simply to venture into uncertainty, venture into unknowing, but to have an openness that there is mystery and miracle mingled together along whatever journey you are taking. That what is to come next is not always up to us, and in fact, sometimes, even if we try, and perhaps especially if we try, for something to happen a certain way, or our lives to just even take a certain direction, even just a day to take a certain direction, we can't control it all, we find out over and over again. The way ahead is filled with unexpected twists and turns, and sometimes you just can't figure it out. Perhaps the mystery of this season is less about charting a certain course or making sure you have a certain experience or feeling, because God knows our best laid plans just tend to fall and fail and become ruin on the holidays, or really any day when you try too hard of what you thought you would accomplish, who you thought would show up, how you thought you would feel. It can happen in an instant that the festivity and the frenzy falls through our hands because we're holding up too many expectations and we can't carry it all. Perhaps at its best, the season of growing darkness toward the winter solstice and finding the light within calls to another type of journey, another type of mystery, what poet Margaret Atwood calls the journey to the interior. Comparing exterior journeys to interior journeys, she writes this: "There are similarities that I notice, that the hills which make the eye, which the eyes make flat as a wall welded together, they open as I move to let me through, and they become endless as prairies, and the trees grow spinely, and they have their roots often in swamps. Mostly, I realize that travel is not easy going from point to point. It isn't a dotted line on a map, a location plotted on some square surface, but that I move surrounded by a tangle of branches, a net of air and light that alternate between light and dark at all times. And there are differences, of course, too, the lack of reliable charts, but more important, the distraction of small details. Your shoe among the brambles under the chair where it shouldn't be, a sentence just crossing my path. Have I been walking in circles again, I ask myself? Many have been here, but a compass is useless. Or trying to take directions from the sun, which seems erratic. Whatever I do, I must keep my head because I know it is easier for me to lose my way forever here than it is on other landscapes." There is a mystery in this season, that the path, the stories told, the star guiding the way and the place where we are meant to arrive, these have been traveled many times. For centuries, for millennia, they are ancient stories of journey. Many have been here, writes the poet. And the mystery is, and even still, even so, and yet, even this well-traveled terrain, I move surrounded by a tangle of branches, a net of air, light and dark alternating, and I can lose my way. The journey that we take this season, the one within, it can become a tangled mess, at least for me. I don't know about you. But it can feel like I'm all of a sudden the subject in the horrible show Unsolved Mysteries, and you don't know why you turn it on, but every day you do, and you keep watching, and you keep thinking, this time they're going to figure it out. We search within, and we move through the season thinking, this time, this year, this place, it will all be clear. I'll figure it all out, and we'll have the best holiday. I'll have the best feeling. It'll all be great and jolly and merry and bright. And the show ends in questions again. Maybe it's the expectation of clarity or the assumption that it's all going to be figured out if we only get to this point or this moment or this thing. It's a litany of if-onlys. If only this or this or this. We look and latch on to the things that we can control and think, like a member in my previous church would joke, oh, I think it's just about when I get this new couch. If I just get this new couch, then everything's going to be good and life will be grand and I will have arrived. I just need the new couch and it'll be fine. We latch on to things, whatever it happens to be. If just this happens, if just this happens, if just this happens. Things are a little more messy than that, aren't they? And that's okay. It's okay that the food might burn or the gifts won't be right or arrive on time. It's okay if the sermon isn't done till 5:30 on Sunday morning. It's okay if unexpected arguments come up from the family or old, ancient arguments come up again. It's okay if the lights might not work and the schedules won't match. Things happen, and it's okay. Perfection is not the expectation, or at least it shouldn't be. But that's something, we got to relearn over and over and over again. It's something I know up here, but I still don't know here. Relearning that perfection is not the goal. So a Unitarian Universalist minister, my colleague Jake Morrill, lifts up the messiness of the season and asks this question: why not just have an adequate Christmas? I love that question. So he writes this: what if it wasn't just a choice between merry and misery? What about a third option, just an adequate Christmas? An adequate Christmas where you could be calm and open, just taking it all in, accepting whatever is. So he gives 3 pieces of advice to get through this season. First, he writes, notice the behaviors that you tend to go to when you're wound up too tight, when you're too anxious. Whatever they are, you don't have to change them or fix them in these mere few weeks, right? But pay attention to them. Be aware and readjust maybe your expectations of yourself or others, right? So number 1 is notice your behaviors when you're wound up. Number 2, say out loud what you want. Nobody can read your mind, and you shouldn't expect people to. People aren't magic, so if you have particular expectations of the season, say them out loud to someone. Say, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to go there, or I do not want to do this, or I do not want to go there. I want to see these people. I do not want to see these people. Whatever it happens to be. So number 2, say out loud what you want. And number 3, he says this last one's a doozy. Treat the holidays as sacred time, a radical idea. Turn your attention toward tradition and spiritual practice, toward encountering and welcoming God or the holy or whatever you call it like you haven't before. Slow it all down like you might be in some way attuned to the pace of the eternal. And if you need, he says, you can fake it at first. And he ends with this: can I promise these things should bring a wonderful Christmas? Well, no, but maybe this year could be adequate. Sometimes on the hunt and the search for the perfect holiday, we're trying to detect the perfect ingredients for a perfect life, the litany of if-onlys. We miss what might surprise us along the way, what hidden treasures, what gifts may come as unexpected, mysterious, beautiful. We can be searching all over, looking from top to bottom and all around the perimeter, and miss what's been shining and dancing in the dark right in the center the whole time. Right in front of us. We can get lost in our determination to find certainty. We can become fixated on a certain endpoint or culmination, a clear ending, and not paying attention to the little mysteries on the path or just off the path. Isn't it a mystery that when you are trying to pay attention to everything and get the big picture and take it all in, sometimes you miss the detail, the little things that are really what you need to heal your soul? Isn't it a mystery when the path that you had planned out, it was clear from day one where you were headed, something happens and it leads you down a different path, and you have found gifts and friends and possibility down that path that now you can't imagine your life without because something shifted? Isn't it a mystery that when we loosen our grip a little bit on crafting and creating and determining what our path will be, what our day will bring, who we will be with, how we will feel, and we let go of the clear guide and map of our expectations, we create space for a whole nother constellation of stars to appear like magic. And we fall and rest into darkness and uncertainty and curl up on the floor with the mystery that we have found a place where we feel loved and it feels like home. Not having a clear destination does not mean we wander aimlessly. It means we wander with the expectation, with the intentional purpose of searching for and finding the unexpected, where love and lights and stars and beauty are waiting for us, and that they might be the most simple things, the most simple gifts that we often overlook. Like these words from the Reverend Victoria Safford. Now is the moment of magic, when the whole round earth turns again toward the sun, and here's a blessing. The days will be longer and brighter now, even before the winter settles in to chill us. Now is the moment of magic, when people beaten down and broken with nothing left but misery and candles and their own clear voices kindle tiny lights and whisper secret music. And here's a blessing. The dark universe is suddenly illuminated by the lights of the menorah, and the whole world is glad and loud with winter singing. Now is the moment of magic, when an eastern star beckons the ignorant toward an unknown goal. And here's the blessing. They find nothing in the end but an ordinary baby, born at midnight, born in poverty. And the baby's cry, like bells ringing, makes people wonder as they wander through their lives what human love might really feel like, look like, sound like. Now is the moment of magic, and here's a blessing. We already possess all the gifts we need. We've already received our presents, senses to hear the music and to behold the lights, hands to build true peace on earth, and to hold each other tight in love. There is magic and mystery that happens all the time. Like last night, as Izzy came back to life in my dreams. She was planting her garden again in the backyard. When people come back to life in your heart and soul, that's mysterious, it's magical, and it's what we need every bit of in this world. Closing. I invite you, as you're comfortable, to join a hand next to you or place your hand on your heart or toward the sky. And breathe deep the breath of life. There is magic and a miracle smack dab in the center of everything if we notice it. If we aren't distracted by all that surrounds us in the frenzy of the season. And we notice what gifts we need and that we already have them. So disappoint some people, but not those you love most. Have an adequate holiday season and come here for strength for the journey. Amen.